This review will examine the blood supply to the head and neck and discuss briefly the venous drainage. So the blood supply to the head and neck, the main player in this is the common carotid artery. The common carotid artery will ascend from, on the right side, the brachiocephalic trunk, and on the left side it will be its own branch off the aortic arch. It will come up, traveling in the carotid sheath with the vagus nerve, and also the internal jugular vein. You can see the relationship that the internal jugular vein is a little bit lateral to the common carotid artery. And then traveling between the two, sandwiched there, is the vagus nerve. As the common carotid goes up at the level of C4-ish, C3-4, C4-5, somewhere in around C4, it bifurcates into the external and internal carotids. The internal carotid artery, which is this guy, you can describe as being a little bit more boring in the neck area as it ends up ascending and going into the carotid canal on the base of the skull, and it ends up dividing within the skull itself. But all you need to know is that this here is the internal carotid. The external carotid is a little bit more fun, as it has several branches that you need to know about. The branches are as follows before I show them: the superior thyroid, the lingual artery, the facial artery, the occipital artery, the superficial temporal artery, and the maxillary artery. The last two I told you about end up being terminal branches of the external carotid. So where you have the external carotid give off the maxillary and the superficial temporal arteries is where the external carotid artery finishes. So let's look at what those branches are. So the first branch coming off the anterior surface of the external carotid is the superior thyroid artery. The superior thyroid artery. Then, going up a little bit further, the next branch coming off is the lingual artery. This guy here is the lingual artery. The next branch coming off would be the facial artery. The facial artery, if we had more of it, is very tortuous. Ends up going onto the face of the of you or I. The next branch coming off is actually going to be heading posteriorly, and that's this guy here, the occipital artery. Okay, occipital artery. And then where we come up and we see that the external carotid artery bifurcates here into the maxillary artery and the superficial temporal artery, which ends up going on to the scalp. The maxillary artery itself has 5 branches that you need to know about. There's a word I use to try to remember it, and that word is mibus. And mibus is the 5 branches of the maxillary artery. So the maxillary artery has M stands for the middle meningeal artery. First I stands for the inferior dental artery. The B stands for the buccal artery. The D stands for the infraorbital artery. And the I stands for the infraorbital artery. And the S stands for the superior alveolar artery. 2 of these you might be able to see in lab. Unfortunately, we don't have them on this guy. The 2 that are most obvious are the middle meningeal artery, as you would have coming off the superior surface of the maxillary, which leads me to believe that this is probably it. And it goes directly superiorly and enters into foramen spinosum and runs behind the tirion. The other one you might be asked to identify would be coming off the inferior surface, and it would be coming down and entering into the mylohyoid canal. Going with this nerve, which is the inferior dental nerve, the artery running in the mandibular canal is the inferior dental or inferior alveolar artery. The internal jugular vein I can get it here. Here we go. Okay, this is the internal jugular vein on the left and right side. It emerges from the jugular foramen of the skull and runs downwards, where it's lateral to the common carotid artery, and it joins the subclavian vein to form the brachiocephalic veins on either respective side. The internal jugular vein receives blood from the brain, infratemporal region, scalp, face, tongue, thyroid gland, by veins that correspond more or less in name to the arteries that supply those same regions.